What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully everyone is having a good day thus far. I know many of you are probably getting ready to watch the Super Bowl this evening. I think it starts in a few hours, so just wanted to jump online. Just wanted to cover off on a few things, a few stories that came up this past week, ending our first full week in February. We had a lot of news come out. I think some bit surprising news, some not so surprising. So I want to jump into some of these topics. Now, you all know how I feel, and I've mentioned this in my videos all the time when it comes to reboots, remakes, even when shows are making a comeback. So let's say like a show's been off the air for a few years, a couple of years, whether that or a decade. I'm not really a big proponent of bringing those shows back to life. I think once those shows end, and if the send off is good, leave it alone. We don't need to see them come back. We don't need to see a resurgence of them. Same thing when it comes to reboots and remakes of films. I'm not a big proponent of them. And I'm sure you all know, as far as me even on that soapbox, what I'm talking about. It does have to do with Buffy the Vampire. And as soon as that information came out, we even started getting rumors about Supernatural. Now, the Supernatural rumors, as far as coming back for a 16th season, have been going on for a couple years now, even when they tried doing the spin-off with the called the Winchesters or something of that nature, where they were following the parents at a younger age. And even in that show, even when Jensen was heavily involved in that show. And when you watch that and go back and compare it to the rest of the original series, a lot of it didn't line up. It didn't make sense as far as the story, at least their stories and the history that we knew of them. So again, that's why I'm not a big proponent of them. And then we're going to just jump into some of the news that we got. Bill Skarsgård is going to be doing something new, and he's joining Hugh Jackman in this new film, which is supposed to be more grounded. And I'm not sure how much of a grounding they're going to take on it, or if it's going to be much of a horror spin on it. So we'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, we have the Critics' Choice Awards, which, if you didn't know already, we got some good news coming out of that, which I think will also set up some good news for the genre going into the Oscars and the Academy Awards and all that. So let's jump into some of these topics real quick, and let's see what we got going on here. So as I mentioned, this right here, this should be no surprise to anybody. So we have Robert Eggers says upcoming Werewolf is the darkest thing he's ever written. Now that is, in my opinion, great news. I didn't think Nosferatu was all that dark. The cinematography was great. Now when you look at it from that perspective, it was dark. But as far as the story goes, I don't think the story was too dark. It wasn't a very scary movie. I know many people didn't like the romantic angle that he took for the film, but outside of that, many people did enjoy it. I know it's a one and done for many people, meaning like one viewing, that's it, not much rewatch value there. I, for one, enjoyed the film. I wouldn't go back and rewatch it, within a couple of days of seeing it. I'll probably go back and rewatch it eventually. I do want to check out the extended cut that was released, as far as with the home or the digital release or the home video physical release. I do want to see what differences there might be there, but outside of that, I don't see myself going back and watching it anytime soon. But the fact that he is now taking on the werewolf story, now he has recently come out and even talked about the fact that he did try doing a Frankenstein film. And he had said, after trying to put something together and writing it, he abandoned it. He trashed it and said it's no good. And the fact that he's looking forward to Del Toro's take on it later this year. We're supposed to get that in November on Netflix. So fingers crossed that that does turn out to be good. We haven't seen any trailers. All we've seen is a one behind the scenes image. And then we recently got a one image actually showing from the film. So not much to go on that one either. But let's look at this one, and there is actually a clip in this article where Robert Eggers mentions this, so it's not like it's hearsay. We're getting it right from the source, right from the person who's going to be doing this film. So as you see here, he announced that he at the start of the year, Robert Eggers did follow up to Nosferatu or Werewolf for focus features, which has already been dated for release in 2026. So that's a quick turnaround. And he was looking at Christmas 2026. I don't know if Christmas is like the Robert Eggers like sweet spot, where he likes to drop things at the end of the year. I mean, this is going to give him 2 full years to put this film together, script, pre-production, post-production, all that work that's going to go into this. I'd imagine if it's going to be a pretty dark film, and if you think about the amount of the look and feel that went into Nosferatu, if it's even at that level or higher, I can see this taking him this amount of time to get this done. So I would anticipate, yeah, 2 years, and we'll have something soon. So we probably won't get a trailer for this until summer 2026. So we're looking at well over a year before we get anything. And that's fingers crossed that we actually get this film. So you see here, it's going to be set in the 13th century. Love that. Medieval horror movie. Check that box off for me as well. Werewolf, another check box for me. So I'm all in for this just based on that, brief information. I love the medieval times, period piece. And we know Robert Eggers is well known for his period pieces. So I'm all in for this one. But my concern is this getting announced so soon? I mean, we're only at the beginning of 2025. Again, this is going to be 2 years away. My concern is that he might not get to actually do this. A lot can change between now and then. This film could get canceled. It might not get the full financial backing. So fingers crossed we actually do get to see this film come to fruition. But what I wanted to point out in this is here's the clip where Robert Eggers is saying how dark it's going to be. So let's play this clip real quick.
But yeah, it's a medieval werewolf movie. It's also the darkest thing I've ever written by far.
So there you have it. I mean, a lot of times when we get information like this, it's information like, secondhand, third hand, somebody heard somebody say it. We actually have him coming out and saying it's gonna be the darkest thing he's ever written, medieval horror werewolf. So again, I'm all in for this one. I'm looking forward to it, but just fingers crossed, even though it has an early announcement, so to speak, from him. I would hate for this to somehow find its way being canceled because of whatever reason. If the studio steps in and says, hey, we want something different, or this is too dark, change it up, and then he decides to walk away because it doesn't fit within his box or his vision of what he had wanted to do. And we've seen directors do that. So again, I don't want to see that on his resume. I'm looking forward to him adding another, dark, one of the kind of classic, characters from the horror space, being a werewolf film, to his resume. I would have loved to have seen him do the Frankenstein thing, but I mean, rightfully so. I mean, if he doesn't feel his story or his take on it was going to be good enough, then at least he stepped away knowing that, hey, I don't have anything to really put out there. It's going to be great. So I'm not even going to try and waste the fans' time. So the next item I want to talk about, as you can see here, once it loads up, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer revival. Sarah Michelle Gellar reveals that talks began 3 years ago. I'm sure talks began. Here, let me refresh this. I'm sure talks began 3 years ago. We know they did, and we know she has come out previously before and said, I'm not interested in doing this, and the only way I would be interested in doing this is if it's done right. Now, I don't know what right is. I don't know what that entails as far as if it's done the right way or the wrong way. Obviously, whatever, as we scroll down through here, I know there's some quotes down here, whether it's from what she said previously. So here you have, the talks must have gone very far at first because in early 2023, Gellar said she had no interest in ever playing Buffy again. So, I mean, that's my point, right? Is she's saying she didn't want to do this, in 2023. Here we are, early 2025. Hey, Life in Horror, how's it going? She's saying she didn't want to do this, and now she's saying she wants to do it. So either two things have happened here. Either they got the story right and she's all in for it, or the paycheck, right? Sometimes that's all it takes, is a paycheck for some of these people to come back into a role. I'm not saying she's hurting for money. I mean, we know she's been keeping busy. We know she's in some behind the scenes stuff with the Legacy sequel for I Know What You Did Last Summer. She's been playing a reappearing role in Dexter Original Sin. Not a big role, but again, reappearing. So again, she's keeping herself busy, but I mean, I'm okay with this had ended before. I'm okay with the original series that ending, and I'm not necessarily out there, chanting and protesting that I need to see Buffy return, especially with her coming back, especially if she comes back as the main character, and if she comes back as a primary character, right? So she may come back as just, hey, this is me. I'm just kind of jumping in out of episodes, kind of guiding the new characters. And we've seen that play out before, and those series don't end well. They usually end with a one and done season, and then that's it. Now, the rumor I wanted to talk about as it relates to this show is the rumor I mentioned at the beginning, which is Supernatural. So Supernatural has been off the air for a few years now, and we know there's always been talk since it went off the air that they were wanting to do a season 16, and they felt that the show ended in a way they could set up a season 16. My opinion, the way you ended the show, because the show was originally supposed to end at season 4. I believe it was season 4 where Sam falls into the pit of hell, and he's down there, he's trapped, and Dean moves on with his life. And at the end of that season, we see Sam standing on the in the street, across the street from the house where Dean is at, and he's kind of moved on with his life. So that's where we find out in the upcoming season Sam has no soul. And that whole following season, that's what they're working towards, is to get Sam's soul back. So we have a comment here from Our Life in Horror. Again, how's it going? I never watched Buffy. I tried a couple of years ago, but couldn't get into it. Yeah, it's one of those shows, Buffy, and then the other, the spinoff show Angel. It is one of those shows that I think it's hard to get into. Even Supernatural. Supernatural has a very hard first couple seasons to get through. And then I think, in my opinion, Supernatural starts to pick up. But Supernatural's problem was because, again, they had intended to end the show. Again, I think it was season 4 or season 5. That's where they had intended to end the show. But then, due to the popularity, they kept it going. And they kept it going for another 10 seasons. And there are some seasons that, even further along in the series, are very hard to get through. Very rough. Even some of the episodes, it's just like, wow, this feels like I'm just watching literally the same thing over and over again. And so I was, as a fan of Supernatural, I was happy to see it end. Dean, obviously we knew Dean was going to meet his demise one way or another. So Dean was killed. Then Sam was the one that ended up moving on with his life. No longer a hunter. He gets married, has kids, and he dies of old age, and then meets Dean in the afterlife on the bridge with the Impala, and then we have the song, and then it's all over. That was the way to let it go out, and I don't think we need to come back to that, because the issue that we're going to have here is, especially if Buffy ended like 2 or 3 years before Supernatural began, so it was probably a good thing that these two didn't cross paths, so to speak, as far as airing on the same day or trying to compete for ratings or compete for viewership. But now the problem is going to be is if you try to bring Buffy back, or you do bring Buffy back, which they are, and then you bring Supernatural season 16 back, you're going to have a split of the fan base. Supernatural hasn't been off the air that long. Buffy has, and fans are going to want to see what's going on with Buffy. They're going to want to see Sarah Michelle Gellar back in a potential role, a leading role in this series. So I think it's going to be a hard hit on Supernatural, because you're going to have fans who are definitely going to want to see that, I think, much sooner or more gravitating towards that versus Supernatural, which, again, hasn't been off the air that long. So, I attempted a few episodes of Supernatural too. Yeah, again, Supernatural, if you got to get past that first season. If you can get past the first season and I'd say the first 3 to 4 episodes of season 2, it does hook you a little bit. You do want to see the initial story play out. But once the initial story plays out, and that's where, both Dean and Sam have to give each other their bodies, their vessels is what they call them in the show, over to an angel. To one, I think Dean has to give his over to, is originally supposed to be over to Lucifer, Sam's is to Lucifer, and Dean's is to Gabriel. They're supposed to have this battle to, over Armageddon, and of course, as you may guess, Dean and Sam kind of push back, but they do eventually. Sam does give his body over and tries to drag it, everyone down to hell. Again, if you can get past the first season and the first bit of season 2, you can get into it. But then after a while, once you start getting into like season 8, 9, 10, and even higher, it does start to feel a bit repetitive. And then I tried getting through it the initial time. I eventually just had to stop because it felt like I was just overloaded with supernatural content. And then eventually just finished it off. But it's not a show that you're going to constantly want to go back and revisit. I think your hardcore fans will. I think your mediocre fans will kind of cherry pick, seasons or episodes that they like and then kind of call it a day. Otherwise, it's not like a, hey, let's have a supernatural marathon. And that goes the same with Buffy. I don't think this is a TV series, even the original, where you could have that. So on the Buffy though, on this reboot, this remake of this revival of it, we have here the quote, and this was again just a couple days ago, where Sarah Michelle Gellar came out after she's made these comments in 2023, right? She came out and said, so you might have heard some news this week, but I realize you haven't heard from me. 3 years ago, I got a call from my dear friend and mentor, Gail Berman. And I mean, this goes on to really just, I'm not going to read it line by line. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen this in one way, shape, or form, but this really, she's just going on to say, like I mentioned already, she didn't want to do it previously. And as time has gone on, the right story came around at the right time, and now she's going, forward with it. I think this could be a success. And as you can see here, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer revival is reportedly nearing a pilot order from the Hulu streaming service. I mean, especially going to, obviously it would go to a streaming service. And I think Hulu is one of those ones that is not hard up for content because you have that crossover between Hulu and Disney Plus now. Even though a lot of subscribers have abandoned Disney Plus going into 2025, more on the international side, so you still have the Hulu aspect. There is a lot of great content on Hulu, but not a lot of new content when it comes to TV series. So this could be a win for Hulu just to get subscribers onto their platform, especially those fans of Buffy who may not have a Hulu subscription, and this might drive them to get one, is by this revival. So obviously we're very much in the early stages of this revival. Again, I'll check it out just to see how it compares to the original series, see if it picks up where the original series left off, or if they're going to treat this as kind of a whole new thing on its own. Outside of that, again, Buffy, Angel, Supernatural, these are shows that are, again, products of their time, and it will be interesting to see how they make Buffy look and feel compared to when it originally came out, right? Like I said, products of their time. When you think about special effects, when you think about just stories in themselves, we've moved on quite a bit. So we'll see how it goes. I obviously don't think this is going to be more than just a few seasons. I mean, obviously, I think they'll have a first season after the pilot just because the fan base will be so hard up to see and want this to succeed. After that, I really don't see this going like 3, 4, or 5 seasons. I think they're just going to try and capitalize on the first season, maybe do the second and call it a day. I mean, if you look at Netflix's model, a lot of times they have very successful TV series, and the next thing you know, they abandon them after 2 or 3 seasons in a cancellation that makes no sense. So, speaking of TV series, if you didn't know already, we have here Shudder orders the Creep Tapes season 2. Now, I'm not surprised by this. The first film, there was a film and there was an intent to do two more films. This whole intent was for this to be a trilogy, and after the success of the first film, going into trying to do the second film, they decided this isn't going to work. Let's make it a series, and which is why they did the first season. And then we know how successful that has been. If you haven't seen the Creep Tapes, if you're a horror fan, I would highly recommend you check it out. I think it's definitely worth giving it an opportunity and a chance. I think you will probably like it if you are a horror fan. The fact that we're getting a season 2 is no surprise to me. Now it's just a matter of when we're going to get it, and obviously it was one of Shudder's biggest successes as far as series on their platform. Now, and that would, again, drive me to think, why not do a season 2? So we're going to look here for a little bit of information. As I mentioned, back in 2014, writer-director Patrick Brice and co-writer star Mark Duplass teamed up with Blumhouse Productions to bring us the found footage horror film Creep, as I mentioned already, which was so well received that a sequel, appropriately titled Creep 2, followed in 2017 before Creep 2 was even released. Brice confirmed that a third film was in development and was meant to wrap up everything as a trilogy. So yeah, this is pretty much everything I just mentioned. And then you see here they move forward with the TV series as they changed plans with the 6 episodes through Shudder and AMC Plus, and then now we're getting season 2. We have just a few quotes down here, but there were no dates set yet. I couldn't find any dates on this one. I looked outside even of this article, and thus far, no dates have been confirmed on when we can expect this. But good news is that we have the green light. We're going to get a season 2 on this. Again, if you have Shudder, put it in your queue, check it out. It is definitely worth at least one viewing. And I think for me, stuff like this, since it is short, it has some rewatch value for me, especially if I'm working on things. I can just have it playing in the background, just having it listen to it, especially if you do one viewing. So highly recommend this one if you want something a little different. Now, this here I think was one of the articles that caught me off guard this past week. Now, this here, we all know Bill Skarsgård's resume when it comes to horror. We know his pedigree in horror. Now, when you just look at this headline here, Bill Skarsgård joins Hugh Jackman in A24's The Death of Robin Hood. Now, when I saw this, I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. We've seen, I don't want to say several. We've seen a number of attempts at doing Robin Hood movies over the decades. We can go far back as all the way to the animated, movie from Disney. When we think live action, obviously the first 2 that come to mind, at least from my generation, is the one with Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and then you have the one with Russell Crowe. The one with Russell Crowe did not land well. It has its moments, but overall it wasn't well received as a Robin Hood movie. And the one with Kevin Costner is very much a product of its time, with Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, and then you have Bryan Adams doing like one of the premier songs of its time that was very popular that most people nowadays can't stand. But what caught me on this one was the fact that they're directs the upcoming dark reimaging, The Death of Robin Hood, for A24, and Deadline reports the latest casting news. So you have Bill Skarsgård, Murray Bartlett, Noah Jupe, and then Hugh Jackman and Jodie Comer. Now, it doesn't say here who's playing who, but just the fact that they say here again, The Death of Robin Hood is said to be a dark reimaging of the classic Robin Hood tale. Set of its time, the film will see the title character grappling with his past after a life of crime and murder, and battle loner who finds himself gravely injured and in the hands of a mysterious woman who offers him a chance at salvation. So the previous versions we've seen of Robin Hood haven't been that. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, again, that's the one I grew up with, Kevin Costner. That one was more of a love story, right? He was trying to, we saw the thievery aspect, right? But ultimately it was just a love story with him and Maid Marian. That was the whole premise of the film. Now this here, the fact that dark reimaging, you have, as they're describing Robin Hood, he's lived a life of crime and murder. So this leads me to believe this is going to be an older version of Robin Hood. And when I look at this casting, and this article doesn't mention, who's playing who. You can see it's a very short article. But when I look at the casting of people, I'm wondering if Hugh Jackman is the one playing Robin Hood. We know Hugh Jackman is obviously older than Bill Skarsgård. So again, if this is something like The Death of Robin Hood, that might be towards the tail end of his life and he's looking for salvation before he dies, or does something to save whoever, then maybe we're gonna see Hugh Jackman in this role, which I don't know if I could picture Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood. But again, this is a dark reimaging. He's lived a life of crime and murder. He's battle worn. So it could be very much like what we saw in Logan, when Hugh Jackman played a much older, really battle torn Wolverine. You know, he's been drinking. I mean, he's pretty much almost at the end of his life, and he does eventually die in that film. Obviously, you know, after fighting, you know what, you know, after the fights he went through, he died at the end. But again, he wasn't the same Wolverine that we saw in previous X-Men films, where he was much younger and he wasn't as easy to take down. So I think this might be one where it says in the title, the death of Robin Hood, right? He's gonna get killed off. It's just a matter of who plays him. I'm thinking Bill Skarsgård might play probably. If you remember again from the original film I was talking about, you know, Christian Slater played his half brother in that film. So I'm wondering if Bill Skarsgård is going to play a potential brother or younger brother to him, and the death might be one of those things where he saves his brother from, you know, being killed or something of that nature. So I am interested to see this. I've always been interested to see a darker version of Robin Hood, but the casting of this is what intrigues me the most, is that I wouldn't envision any of these individuals playing in a Robin Hood film, especially a modern dark version. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, the last topic I want to cover before we wrap things up for today's first live episode. I'm stoked to see this. I'm very happy to see this. I've been on this campaign since the beginning. I mentioned as soon as the Substance dropped, and you know we were getting towards the end of 2024, and awards season was starting up. I had said my fingers crossed that either the Substance or Nosferatu kind of lays the foundation and starts breaking the door down for horror films when it comes to awards season. And I think obviously the Substance has been able to do that. So as you can see here, the Substance wins 3 Critics' Choice Awards, and Demi Moore shouts out overlooked horror movies. So I believe she, as you can see here, she won Best Actress. We had also Best Original Screenplay and Best Hair and Makeup. So this is the second award Demi Moore has won for Best Actress for this film. I am hoping, and then we have a quote here more added. Normally horror films are overlooked and not seen for the profanity that they can hold. I agree with that. And again, I've been saying that since day one. I feel there are so many great horror films, especially that came out in 2024, that should have been highlighted more, should have gotten more attention. And it's unfortunate that when award season comes around, horror films have always been overlooked. They don't even have their own category. If I remember correctly, in the first award show that she won something in, the category was for musical and comedy. And that's where they place horror films, because horror films don't have their own category. She won, was happy to see that, and they had 5 nominations in that award show, and in here they had 3. And I think for the Oscars they have 3 or 4 as well, and she's up for best actress, I believe, if I remember correctly. So the fact that she could potentially win 3 Best Actress awards for The Substance, I think that's great for her, because I know she came out about a month ago saying that this script, when she got it, is what really saved her career and brought her back into acting. She was pretty much saying, hey, I'm done with acting. I'm not sure where my career goes from here. This script came across her desk and she's, love the script. I gotta be in this. I gotta do this. She did it, and this is the outcome. It was a great film. She did get already 2 awards for it, and then she's potentially going to get a 3rd. If she wins the next one, which I think she has a really good chance and a really good case of winning this 3rd award, I think this might be the opportunity where people start taking horror films a bit more seriously when it comes to award season. Between this film and Nosferatu, but Nosferatu, I think, had high expectations that it would probably get nominated. It was probably, those were going to be like a give me, so to speak, just because of 1, the director, 2, who was in it, and 3, just the cinematography of Nosferatu. You kind of felt like, oh yeah, that's a give me. It's going to probably get nominated. When you hear about The Substance and you see the film, or if you've seen, clippets of it, you don't immediately think to yourself, oh, this is going to be up for awards season. You don't think that. But the fact that it has, and it's won awards already, I think this will be the film that sets the tone, sets the foundation going forward for horror films, And people need to start taking horror films a bit more seriously when it comes to these award shows. I'm not saying every horror film out there is award worthy. I'm not saying that. And I've always said with any film or TV series, it's all subjective. Some of you may have seen The Substance and said, this is absolutely stupid. I'm never watching this again. How can this thing be winning awards? And others are saying it's a great film. It deserves the awards. I think it's a great film, and I've said this and I'll repeat it. I loved the film up until about the last 5 to 8 minutes of the film. The last 5 to 8 minutes of the film kind of lost me. I felt it was a bit much, a bit overkill. It could have been toned down a bit to meet the tone of the rest of the film that I had just seen. Nonetheless, I would still give the film an easy 4.5 out of 5. No problems there, and it's well deserving of the awards it's getting and the attention. This is no different than Terrifier 3 getting all the attention it was getting. When Terrifier 3, when it came out, obviously the cult following of the Terrifier series brought that one all the attention. But then as more and more people saw it, the cult following got bigger. I mean, you had Art the Clown ringing the bell, closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. You've seen an art arcade video game being made and coming out. All the merchandise that came out from this, and it's been praised not just for the glass ceiling it broke for unrated films, but the amount of money it made. It was a $2 million investment that made over $90 million. So people are, tripping over themselves to get involved in that film and get involved and see how they can invest in the next film, which Terrifier 4, which we've already confirmed. Terrifier 4 is the last film. That's been public knowledge. That's already been confirmed by the creator. So there's no more speculation around, is there going to be a fourth and fifth film? There's just going to be a fourth film, which he is saying is supposed to also touch on the origin story of Art the Clown, which we'll save that for the next show, because I have my own opinions on origin stories this far into a series. When you're 4 films in, I'm not sure if you really want to dip into the origin story unless you plan on possibly doing a spin-off, which I think would probably be the better thing to do, but that's my opinion. But back onto this topic to close this up. Again, The Substance wins 3 Critical Choice Awards. I'm very happy for Demi Moore. I hope she wins the Oscar for Best Actress for this. Again, it'd be nothing but great stuff for the horror genre. And maybe going in, as we have been into 2025, we've seen a lot of horror films already released, and we're only 9 days in to February. We have a lot more to come this year. And so hopefully some of these films do kind of follow suit, kind of follow in the footsteps of The Substance, gets that attention. We get out there and support. So even some of these low mid-level budget films can be great as well. I mean, you saw Terrifier, you saw how that one started and where it's at. I think the same thing can happen with some of these other films. So again, I think we just need to get out there and support them. But happy to see this one. So hopefully we can have more to come as far as more celebrations for The Substance and Demi Moore winning some more awards. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for this show today. Again, there was just a few things I wanted to talk about as far as ending the first week of February. I know we have a lot more horror content coming this year and even this month. I know we have several film releases, theatrical releases going into March. Even going into this coming week, I think there's probably like 3 or 4 films dropping on February 14th on digital. So be on the lookout on the channel. We're going to be covering those, doing movie reviews as well on those films during our daily episodes as well. So I want to just thank everyone if you've tuned in. I appreciate all the support. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't done so, please drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you've seen like the show. I'll put it back up here for you. The creep tapes over on here, just in case you don't know what it looks like. One more time, we have the Creep Tapes season 2, but season 1 is available on Shudder. So again, go check it out if you haven't seen it. Otherwise, that's going to do it for today's show, and we will see you at the next one. Peace.